It's 3:07 a.m. You wake up. You need water. Simple enough. You roll out of bed, put your feet on the floor, and start walking toward the kitchen. The hallway is completely dark, and suddenly, for absolutely no logical reason, your heart starts pounding. Your eyes go wide. Your breath gets shallow. You walk a little faster. You know nothing is there. You live alone. You locked the door. You have a security system and a Ring doorbell and a dog named Steve. And yet, you make it to the kitchen, grab the water, turn around, and now the hallway looks even worse than before. So you do what every rational, fully grown adult does. You sprint back to your room and launch yourself onto the bed like the floor is made of lava. And then you lie there, heart hammering, thinking, what is wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. In fact, something is very, very right with you. And by the end of this video, you'll never think about darkness or your own brain the same way again. Let's start with something nobody ever talks about. In every single human culture on Earth, no exceptions, children are afraid of the dark. Not in some cultures, not in most cultures. Every single one. A kid in Tokyo, a kid in the Amazon, a kid in rural Iceland who has never seen a movie, never heard a scary story, never owned a TV, at some point won't go into that dark room. Period. Scientists noticed this pattern and started asking the obvious question. Why? Why would darkness, just the absence of light, trigger a near universal fear response in humans? And here's where it gets interesting, because the answer is not what most people think. Most people assume fear of the dark is about monsters, bogeymen, things that go bump in the night. But that's completely backwards. The monsters didn't create the fear. The fear created the monsters. Your brain was already terrified of the dark. It just needed something to explain why. So it invented something terrifying to put in there. And that invention, that deeply creative, deeply irrational move your brain makes every single night, turns out to be one of the most powerful survival tools in the history of our species. But to understand why, we need to go back, way back, about 300,000 years back. Picture a small group of stickmen huddled around a fire. It's night on the African savanna. The fire throws a small circle of orange light. Beyond that circle, absolute black. One stickman, let's call him Chad, decides he needs to stretch his legs. He stands up, takes 3 steps away from the fire, and disappears into the darkness. His friends wait. They keep waiting. Chad does not come back. Now here's the thing people always forget about early humans. We were not the apex predator. We were prey. Leopards hunted us. Lions hunted us. Hyenas hunted us. Crocodiles hunted us. Giant cave hyenas the size of modern lions hunted us. And almost every single one of those predators shared one enormous advantage. They were built for the night. Lions, according to research from the Serengeti, are significantly more successful at hunting when there's little to no moonlight. Leopards are ambush predators with eyes that collect light like satellite dishes. Hyenas can track by scent in pitch black. Early humans, by contrast, could barely see their own hands after sunset. Every night, for hundreds of thousands of years, the moment the sun went down, the game completely changed. The things that wanted to eat you just got a massive upgrade. And the humans who didn't take that seriously, the ones who wandered off into the dark thinking it was probably fine, who stretched their legs like Chad, they died, frequently. But the anxious ones, the ones who flinched at shadows, who sat close to the fire, who refused to sleep until they'd checked every dark corner, they survived. They had kids. Those kids inherited the anxiety. Their kids had kids. Those kids inherited it too. Generation after generation after generation. For 300,000 years, the most paranoid, most jumpy, most darkness-fearing humans kept surviving, while the chill ones kept getting eaten. And eventually, one of those anxious little stickmen grew up, moved into an apartment, installed a Ring doorbell, and lay in bed at 3, and wondering why his heart was pounding. That stickman is you. You didn't inherit a weakness. You inherited the software that kept your entire bloodline alive. Now here's a question that should genuinely bother you. Think about your most relaxed, rational friend. The one who laughs at scary movies. The one who never locks the bathroom door. completely unbothered by everything. Now turn off all the lights in their house at 2 a.m. Bet you they walk a little faster down the hallway too, because this fear doesn't live in your personality. It lives somewhere much older. Deep inside your brain is a tiny almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. Picture it as a tiny stickman, even tinier than the regular stickman, sitting at a control panel with one giant red danger button in front of him. That's his whole job. One button. Press it when there's danger. Here's the thing. This stickman is not smart. He is not thoughtful. He does not read emails or attend meetings or engage in critical thinking. He just watches for threats, and the second he thinks he sees one, he absolutely destroys that button. When you walk into a dark room, the amygdala doesn't wait for evidence. It doesn't calmly assess the situation. It sees darkness, which for 300,000 years meant predators are now at an advantage, and it goes immediately, completely berserk. Cortisol and adrenaline flood your bloodstream. Your pupils blow wide open. Your muscles load up with blood. Your hearing sharpens so much you can hear your own heartbeat. Your skin starts to sweat to reduce friction in case you need to run. All of this happens before you've consciously registered that you feel afraid. Before you know you're scared. Research on the threat response shows it fires in under 100 milliseconds, faster than you can blink, faster than a conscious thought has even formed. Your logical brain is still booting up, still thinking, okay, it's probably fine, I live here, I know this house, and your amygdala has already launched the full emergency protocol. This is why you can't just tell yourself to calm down in the dark. You're trying to reason with a system that literally does not speak the language of reason. Okay, so darkness triggers the threat system. That explains the racing heart. But here's what it doesn't explain. Why does darkness feel like something is watching you? Why, when you're lying in bed at night, does it feel like something in the corner is looking at you? You know nothing is there. You've lived in this room for 3 years. You know every inch of it. You could draw a map. And yet, something feels present. Here's the part most people have never considered, and this might be the most important thing in this entire video. Your brain does not just react to what's there. It reacts to what it cannot confirm is not there. Read that again. In daylight, you glance at the corner. Nothing. Your brain files that away and relaxes. In darkness, you cannot confirm the corner is empty. And your brain, which has operated for 300,000 years on the assumption that an unconfirmed corner might contain something that wants to kill you, treats that uncertainty as a threat. Not because it's irrational, because historically, I'll just assume it's fine had a very specific and very permanent consequence. Your brain is essentially a prediction machine. It takes in information, builds a model of the world, and uses that model to keep you alive. When you take away light, you strip out roughly 80% of the data it normally runs on. And a prediction machine running on 20% data does not shut down and wait. It fills in the gaps. With what? With whatever historically would have been the most dangerous possibility. This is where your imagination turns completely against you. Picture the stickman standing at the top of the basement stairs. It's late. He went down to grab something from the freezer. He got it. Now he's standing at the bottom of the steps, hand on the light switch. He turns off the light. The basement goes black. He is a grown adult. He has a PhD. He has seen this basement in daylight every day for 5 years. He knows with complete certainty there is nothing in this basement except a freezer, a water heater, and 4 boxes of stuff he keeps meaning to donate. He takes one step toward the stairs. Then another, and then something very old wakes up in his brain and says, run. And he does. He takes those stairs like he's auditioning for the Olympics. He gets to the top, slams the door, leans against it, breathing hard, and thinks, I am a grown man with a PhD. Be honest. How many of you just described yourself? Drop it in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone here, because here's what's actually happening in that basement. Your brain has just performed a rapid cost-benefit analysis, one it's been running for 300,000 years. Cost of assuming nothing is in the basement when something is there. Death. Cost of assuming something is in the basement when nothing is there, you feel a little silly for 3 seconds. The math is obvious. Your ancient brain will always take that bet. But here's what's fascinating, because adults know better. Adults understand probability. Adults have lived in these houses for years without incident. Adults have seen every corner of their home in broad daylight and confirmed no monsters. No predators, just furniture and bad lighting decisions. And yet a 2019 survey found that nearly 40% of adults in the US won't walk through a dark house without turning lights on, even when they know the house is completely empty. These are not children. These are tax-paying, gym membership-owning, podcast-listening adults with absolutely zero history of being attacked by nocturnal predators. Still afraid. Because here's the brutal truth. Knowing something in your conscious mind and feeling it in your body are two completely different things. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational, thoughtful, I took a psychology class in college part of your brain, absolutely knows there's no danger. Your amygdala, the 300,000-year-old button-smashing threat detector, does not care what your prefrontal cortex thinks. It doesn't read your logic. It cannot be reasoned with. It doesn't speak English. It speaks one language. Darkness, threat, possible. Darkness, threat, possible. Darkness, threat, possible. Over and over. Every single time the lights go out. Now let's get back to the cave for a second, because this is where it gets really interesting. Picture the tribe around the fire again. It's been a long day. People are tired. Some of them start to drift off to sleep. And here's a question that should mess with your head. Who survived better? The ones who slept deeply and got full rest? Or the ones who kept waking up at every sound, every shadow, every rustle in the dark? The answer, for most of human history, was the anxious ones. Because here's what researchers who study sleep in traditional societies found. Our ancestors didn't sleep like we do. They didn't do a solid 8 hours. They slept in shifts. Some people stayed awake while others rested. And even those who slept woke frequently through the night. Scanning, listening, checking. The ones who slept the deepest often didn't make it. Sleep was a vulnerability. The night was a gauntlet. And so the brain developed a very specific nighttime mode. Even when you're resting, some part of you stays alert, monitoring, listening for sounds that don't belong, watching for movement in the dark. That system is still running in you tonight. Every time you wake up at a random noise in the middle of the night, every time a creak in the house snaps you instantly awake, that's not a sleep disorder. That's your 300,000-year-old night watch still doing its rounds. Here's something researchers discovered that completely reframes what fear of the dark actually is. Scientists who study anxiety noticed a strange pattern. People who fear the dark most intensely don't tend to have a history of trauma. They don't have specific bad experiences with the dark. They haven't watched too many horror movies. What they tend to have in common is something called intolerance of uncertainty. They're people who find it genuinely uncomfortable to not know outcomes, to sit with open-ended situations, to operate without complete information. And the dark is, literally, physically, the most information-deprived environment a human can be in. Which means your fear of the dark is not actually about the dark. It never was. It's about what the dark represents. Darkness isn't the threat. Darkness is the unknown. And humans, more than any other species on Earth, are absolutely terrible at tolerating the unknown. We build maps to eliminate it. We make calendars to control time. We send probes to Pluto not because we're going there, but because we physically cannot stand not knowing what's out there. The dark room is just the most personal, most immediate version of the thing humans have always feared most. I cannot confirm what's in there, therefore dangerous until proven otherwise. That's not a bug. That's the entire operating system. What's the most elaborate thing your brain has ever convinced you was in the dark? A shape? A figure? A face in the closet? Tell me in the comments. These are genuinely incredible. Now here's the detail that proves none of this is learned. The detail that shows this is baked into us at a level so deep, it appears before we even know how the world works. Children start fearing the dark between ages 2 and 4. Before that window, most kids are completely fine in the dark, genuinely unbothered. Then something clicks in the developing brain. A new capability comes online, and suddenly, will not go in that room, will not sleep without the light on. There is something in the closet. What turns on at age 2 to 4? The ability to imagine things that aren't present. Before that developmental stage, if you can't see something, it essentially doesn't exist in your mind. Out of sight, genuinely out of mind. After it, You can imagine the corner. You can picture what might be behind the door. You can wonder, for the first time, about what you can't see. And the very first thing the human imagination does with that brand new power, it populates the darkness with monsters. 2-year-olds aren't scared of the dark because they can't imagine what's in it yet. 4-year-olds are terrified of the dark because they just discovered their imagination has no limits and it immediately went somewhere horrible. Every culture, every mythology, every monster, every ghost story, every horror movie ever made, all of it traces back to this exact moment. Imagination turns on. Imagination meets darkness. And the ancient threat detection system goes, yes, put something terrible in there. That's the origin of every monster that has ever existed. They weren't created by storytellers. They were created by nervous systems. One more layer. And this one is genuinely going to disturb you. Here's a question. Do you ever see shapes in the dark? A figure in the corner that turns out to be your coat on a chair? Eyes in the shadows that are just two reflections? A face in the closet that's just the pattern of hanging clothes? You know exactly what I'm talking about. And here's the wild part. That's not your imagination being dramatic. That's your visual cortex doing its job. When you deny the brain its primary source of input, light, the visual cortex doesn't go quiet. It doesn't shut down and wait. It starts working harder, generating, trying to build a picture from whatever scraps of data it can find. And when it runs out of data, it defaults to generating the shapes that were historically most critical to detect. Faces, eyes, figures. Because in the ancestral environment, misidentifying a leaf as an eye cost you nothing. But misidentifying an eye as a leaf could cost you everything. So your brain, running on almost no visual information, generates faces in the shadows, suggests figures in the dark corners, convinces you for one horrible second that the pile of clothes on the chair is a person standing there. Every single time. This isn't a malfunction. This is precision engineering. Your brain is searching the darkness for the one thing that, throughout human history, was always the most dangerous thing to miss. Another living thing that might be looking back at you. So here's what's actually happening at 3 and when you walk down that hallway. Darkness arrives. Light, 80% of your sensory input, disappears. Your amygdala fires before you can think. Adrenaline and cortisol flood your system in under 100 milliseconds. Your visual cortex starts generating faces in the shadows. Your imagination, the same one that builds worlds and writes songs, immediately starts filling the blank with worst-case scenarios. Your ancient night watch instinct tells you something might be awake in the dark. Your body tenses to run. All of this happens in under 1 second. Not because of a noise, not because of movement, not because of any actual evidence of danger, because of the absence of information. Which brings us to the real revelation, the thing that will actually change how you think about yourself. You are not afraid of the dark. You never were. You are afraid of not knowing. You are afraid of the question the darkness asks. What is in here that I cannot see? And that question, for almost every second of human existence on this planet, had genuinely, fatally dangerous answers. The fear was never paranoia. It was accuracy. It was the correct response to a world full of things that wanted to eat you in the dark. The fact that you feel it now, in your apartment in the 21st century, with a deadbolt and a Ring doorbell and a dog named Steve, isn't weakness. It's a legacy, a survival program written into your DNA by 300 years of ancestors who were afraid enough to make it through the night. For almost all of human history, darkness was where danger lived. The leopards are gone. The cave hyenas are gone. The savanna is now a suburb, and the biggest threat in your hallway is probably stepping on a Lego. But the program, still running, right now, inside every single human brain on the planet. The next time you sprint from the light switch to your bed, and you know exactly who you are, you're not being childish, you're being ancient. You're running software older than writing, older than farming, older than civilization itself. You're doing precisely what your entire bloodline did to survive. But here's the question I can't stop thinking about. If our brains still carry a fear that was written in the Stone Age, a fear that no longer matches our world, a fear that fires in response to things that haven't been dangerous for thousands of years, then what else is quietly running in the background? What other ancient programs are shaping your decisions, your relationships, your fears, your entire life, without you ever knowing they're there?